focusing on even secondary education. I was in 2008 doing a research on educational reforms in Ghana, where I just started the implementation of the new educational reforms at the time in 2007. So I was doing something on changing faces of education in Ghana, a look at our educational reforms. Now, I went into a community, and in that secondary school, for instance, the man who was teaching physics was a friend of mine who had read biology. But he got into the school, and because there was no physics teacher, he had to go in there and teach them. But I knew this guy, and he wanted me to come to the school and also see other things as part of the research. But since we have, Kofi Asare, let's just get started.
We're joined now by Kofi Asare of Africa Education Watch. Kofi, thank you for your time. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Now, we will talk about Sagbonjida and what's happening there. But I think it bears mentioning, just before we get into it, this is a conversation about education. And as we speak, the government is in the middle of an activity to reform our education sector. However, the Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference and the Christian Council of Ghana are complaining that they have not been invited as stakeholders to this. I wonder, what's your take on this, what they consider to be an oversight?
Okay, thank you. The National Education Forum will be launched today in Ho by His Excellency the President, after which we will start zonal consultations in all the regions. So today is the launch. I'm aware of the statement issued by the Catholic bishops, but the Catholic bishops have confirmed to us that they will be here this morning, and they are actually on the program in Ho.
Okay.
The strategy of the planning committee is to have a separate zonal engagement for the religious groups, because they are the highest number of stakeholders within the community. Over 40 religious groups across all faiths, either owning schools or investing in education. And so that would be a separate engagement.
Kofi, yes, Kofi, before you continue, I'm looking at the statement, and it says, as key stakeholders in the education sector, particularly in the provision of quality education through our schools, we are perplexed by the omission of our contributions to discussions that are pivotal to the future of education in Ghana. They are complaining about their omission to the omission of their contributions to the discussion.
Okay, and I have a copy of the statement. Okay. And I'm saying that as part of our engagement strategy, we are scheduled to have a separate engagement for all faith-based organizations. That is because the FBOs established about 40% of public educational institutions. And so their number is huge, cut across faith. And so the strategy is to have separate engagement for FBOs, okay, at the national level. The second strategy is that during the zonal level of engagement, we invite FBOs at the regional level to participate. So as we are here, I have said earlier, and I'll repeat that the Catholic Bishop, for instance, will be participating at today's program in Ho. So the statement is actually, I see it as a communication error, because the Catholic bishops will be on the program here today.
So if I may ask, when were they added to the program?
The Catholic bishops, Christian Council of Ghana, Methodist Church, Presbyterian Church, and all the other faith-based organizations have been part of the stakeholder list already. You see,
but did you communicate this to them?
10 fora. So if you say the program, it appears that you're having only one. No, we are having 10 fora. And all the 10 are of equal relevance. One is not more important than the other.
Right.
So we have strategically invited stakeholders to participate in each and every one of the engagements. It is not that one is more important than the other. I'm saying that for the one we are the launch in the Catholic bishops will be participating.
And
their rep will be here, and they have confirmed this morning. Okay, and so it is not that there's a communication error, and the communication error is that they are not aware that there's a separate engagement being planned for them because of their numbers, because their numbers are 84. Okay, and that is the whole session, and so
we've understood that
between the Ministry of Education, I guess, and then them.
Okay,
that is why I'm saying that they are participating in today's program.
Yeah, we've understood that point, Kofi. I think now we just need to unpick how this happened. So they are going to be there this morning, but they issued a statement yesterday saying that they have not been included. So does this mean that as at yesterday, they had not been informed that they are supposed to be there this morning?
It may be. The committee is not the one that invites people. It's the ministry. Okay?
Right.
So it may be. It may be. But this morning, the Catholic bishops have confirmed that their rep will be here. It may be that there was a communication error between the ministry and them. The committee is not responsible for inviting people. But
the committee, however, is
validated a list of stakeholders that should be invited, and included many faith-based organizations from various faiths. And the strategy is that we are going to have a session. In addition to they participating in the zonal engagement, we're going to have a special session at the national level for the faith-based organizations alone, across faith.
We've understood that. So that was the original design of this forum. Now, was that also not communicated to the stakeholders? The fact that there will be 10 different fora, and you know that the Catholic bishops and the Christian will form one particular separate, forum. Was that not communicated to them?
There was a press conference held by the committee chair, I think, on Friday. And at that press conference, he outlined all the engagements. Okay, so I don't know whether your media house was there at the Ministry of Education.
Well,
so they outlined all the plans.
If you invited us, we'll be there.
Pardon me?
If we were invited, then we were definitely there, yeah.
Yeah, for that, I wasn't there, but then I watched the press conference on Facebook Live on the Ministry of Education platform, and I realized that an outline of the engagement was given. So, but it is not the case that you must inform important stakeholders like the faith-based organizations through a press conference. A letter should have reached them in good time to inform them that we have a plan to meet them on this date, and that we have also invited 7 members each to take part in each of the zonal engagements, including the whole NOT zonal engagement, which will be tomorrow in Ho here. But I am sure that that communication did not reach the national of the organizations. But the originals, for example, tomorrow's event, there are about 8 people coming from the Christian Council, from the Catholic bishops, Methodists, about 8 people coming from these groups for tomorrow's regional engagement at the whole technical university. You understand? And similar numbers have been invited across the country. On Friday, there will be a Greater Accra zonal engagement at the UPSC. They are part of it. There are about 6 members. On that same Friday, there will be a simultaneous one at the University of Cape Coast for Central and Western. They are about 6 members. So across the country, they've been invited. I'm sure that there was a communication error between the ministry and the headquarters of this organization. And that's why I'm saying that once we have a plan for them and the error has been corrected, for me, that's the way to go. We should just make sure that they participate, and then we take their input serious in planning education forward.
Okay, Kofi. Let's now talk about Sagbonjida. Now, we're all so bothered by this, so concerned that this is happening. But how widespread is this? Or is Sagbonjida an isolated incident?
Well, in the deprived part of this country, there are issues with teacher dependency. it is no news. We know that statistically we have more teachers than we need in basic schools in Ghana. But the reality is that because of an inequitable teacher distribution system, we have teachers populated in urban and peri-urban areas beyond the numbers that are required. And in some deprived schools, we have teachers they are underserved by way of teacher availability. So it's a fundamental issue in our education system, and we've kept raising this issue all the time. It manifests in various forms. The worst form is that you will not find a teacher in the classroom. In our medium-term review report of 2022, there were 5,000 primary school classrooms that do not have teachers across the country, and majority of this were located in the 5 northern regions, in Western North and Unity. So the worst form is where there is no teacher at all in the classroom, and then the next to that is that where you have a volunteer or someone who is not properly trained or licensed to teach, holding the forts. And then sometimes you will have a teacher who, because of the level of deprivation of the area, is not regular and, naturally visits the school instead of remaining in the school. So this is a systemic issue that requires a systemic response.
But Kofi, I mean, you talk about 5,000 classrooms where there are no teachers. You've talked about statistically, if we're to look on paper, the number of teachers we have, and I've been looking at the number of teachers we have, and we're looking at a teacher to pupil ratio of below 30. That on paper is very commendable. But how is it the case that these teachers are not in the classrooms where they are needed to teach? Where are they teaching?
The teacher to pupil ratio is misleading when analyzing teacher availability. Where teachers are overpopulated, you will have a lower pupil-teacher ratio, even though the teachers are not available in some schools.
Yeah.
And so normally we use the class PTR. If you do the class PTR analysis, you realize that it's very high, about 60 plus in deprived areas, and also in areas in heavily urbanized areas like Accra, Adenta, Wojagbawe, very, very high, up to 104 in a class, in places like Papa and Catholic, in Amasaman area, etc. But in the rural areas, the situation is worse. And it is worse because our teachers are not motivated to accept posting to rural areas. Now, let me review interventions by government, past and present, to resolve this issue and how far we have come. In the education reform of 2006, it was recommended that deprived area allowances be given to teachers who accept to teach in these areas to attract them. Since then, as we speak, it has never been implemented. And so if a teacher accepts to go and teach in that area, they will receive the same 3,000 cedis or so as a teacher who accepts to teach near his house, let's say in Medina. So there's no motivation for someone to travel all the way there to teach. In other jurisdictions, you'll be getting between 20 or 40% more of your salary as motivation to teach there. Because once you are teaching there, you are deprived of other social and economic opportunities simply because you are in that area. So I want to emphasize that this current government has had in its manifesto at least 2-3 times the introduction of a deprived teacher area allowance. In this manifesto, it is there. And it is a promise that civil society organizations intend to put pressure on this government to implement in this first year. We believe that once we have that particular position in the conditions of services of teachers, it is time to have it implemented from this year. If we have motivation for teachers to go to that areas, it will be one solution to the problem, while we look for other solutions, including the teacher accommodation situation. Because for one to go to such areas, you need to have accommodation. Where there's no accommodation, it's difficult for one to accept posting. Again, this government has promised that it will roll out a program called Tadabre, where new schools being constructed will not be constructed without teacher accommodation in deprived areas. This recommendation has been on the table again for decades. And so we intend to work closely with teacher unions to demand accountability from the government to ensure that not only are new schools to be constructed going to have the full component of teacher accommodation in such deprived areas, but also efforts are made to provide teacher accommodation facilities in existing schools in these deprived areas. Without teacher accommodation motivation, we can seek all the grammar in the world. No trained teacher will willfully go and teach in those areas.
But I mean, while you talk about that, and I'm looking at, I'm looking at the teacher-pupil ratio. You've talked about that being misleading, but for purposes of analysis, for instance, you look at that, and I see that in 2022 at kindergarten we have a pupil-to-teacher ratio nationally of 29:1. This, on paper, is good. You've explained these things, but in the interim, isn't it problematic that in a whole school, you don't have anybody teaching in that school? How do we expect these students to have the best foundation to progress to the primary, secondary, and tertiary level?
Yes. You see, the national data for pupil-teacher ratio always looks good. We've actually exceeded the target, because the target is to have 35 at the primary and 30 at the upper levels. So all the time, the PTR at the national level for junior high schools is less than 20. It's about 17. So we've always exceeded our teacher norms at the national level. But if you do the regional analysis of PTRs, that's why you realize that the PTR in the northern region is highest. And it is more than, it exceeds the national teaching norms. So always at the national level, the picture will look good, because you would have divided the total number of teachers in the system, including the oversupply teachers in Adenta municipality. You add all the oversupply teachers, and then you divide them by the total number of students in public basic schools. So because of that effect, you have a good number. But the regional PTRs are always high in the northern regions and OT, especially. Very high. Higher than sometimes twice than the national average. So what I want to say is that we also have not been purposive enough in teacher deployment. That is one issue. Mm-hmm. The GES, the good thing is that last year, the GES introduced a self-placement teacher posting model. I'm not saying that is the ideal. The ideal would have been to have a fully decentralized teacher recruitment model, where district assemblies are responsible for recruiting teachers based on their teacher needs. That would have been the ideal situation to prevent the overpopulation of teachers in where they are not needed and the undersupply of teachers to where they are needed. But in the absence of a fully devolved education system, which we've been doing drama about for the past 15 years, this teacher placement model allows newly placed teachers, upon the opening of recruitment portals, to go onto the portal and select only schools that have vacancies. And so if Kofi Asare is licensed and is due for posting and he goes on the portal, Kofi Asare will only see schools that have declared vacancies verified by GAS. Kofi Asare may not see the biology school in Isegon because there are more teachers than they even need. But they will see schools that are unassessed. So this is one way to make our teacher deployment more demand-driven. And so that was a good policy that the government started last year. We are yet to review its effectiveness, especially in some 20 districts where we did a study and found that they had the highest level of teacher deficits, including Central Gonja, which had up to 83% teacher deficit at the KG level and 75% deficit at the primary level. They had to do a review of the situation to ascertain the extent to which this teacher placement model influence positively teacher deployment in this extremely underserved district. But having said that, I will say that in the long term, we must add the political role to efforts to decentralize teacher deployment. If district assemblies are responsible for deploying teachers, even if national is giving allocations to districts and districts are deploying per their allocations, which allocations will be based on their needs, I am sure that district assemblies are more positioned to get teachers who will go and work in their schools than for national government to post or to facilitate the posting of teachers from the national, and then expecting that they will report and then be regular. So that is one way I think that we can address the huge deficits in deprived areas.
Right. Kofi, let's also talk about the fact that this school has been left off the school feeding program. Under what circumstances would that happen, and how can they go about effectively resolving that?
The school feeding program, unfortunately, it started as a program targeting areas where there are nutritional issues and then enrollment issues. The school feeding program is helping to improve enrollment and also enhance nutrition. All reviews of the program since 2006, when it was introduced, indicates positive outcomes. The challenge has been that the school feeding program has been heavily politicized. Apart from the procurement aspect belonging to party people, okay, the selection of schools is a subject of politics. And so one needs influence to manage to get a community onto the list, rather than poverty indicators, more nourishment or more nutrition indicators, or access indicators determining the selection of schools. And so we have continued to advocate that we must have a fully decentralized school feeding program. And I am again, am I online?
Yes, you're online. Continue.
Yeah, I am again reiterating the fact that Africa Education Watch, as part of our advocacy note to the new government, we have emphasized that the promise by this government to decentralize the school feeding program must see the light of day, and must see the light of day immediately. When the school feeding program is decentralized, what happens is that districts have more control, okay, about the management of the program and also its responsibility. In that case, CSOs, citizens will demand accountability from the district assembly instead of a school feeding secretariat where I don't even know where they are. If I am living in DRP in Upper Denchais or West, I wouldn't know where they are. So the promises to decentralize school feeding programs didn't start now. But there's one more promise this time around, which we intend to hold the government accountable. The reason why this school is not in the program is because the program is poverty blind. It is inclusive blind. It is rather responsive to influences. That is the reality of the Ghana school feeding program. Now we have the school feeding program serving a little over 3 million students. About 40% of basic school students are not on the program. And so there are a lot of issues with the program. Apart from many schools in deprived areas, you go to BRS, many deprived areas you go, and only half of their schools are covered, when the remaining half are in extreme poverty. But we have schools in peri-urban Ghana that are benefiting from the program. We believe that the school feeding program should be extended to all public basic schools, not just primary schools and junior high schools and kindergartens in the deprived areas. In the 75 deprived districts we have, every school outside the schools in the district capitals should be on the school feeding program. So plans to expand the program to cover all schools should start from the deprived part of the country. And this cannot materialize if we continue to have a centralized school feeding program. We must centralize it, give authority and responsibility to the district assemblies, and then demand accountability from them in the management of the program. Apart from that, the funding of the program also, you bear with me, is an issue. Because the reason why we've not been able to expand the school feeding program to as many schools compared to other countries like South Africa, where every school has been covered, 98% coverage. In Southern Africa, most of the schools are doing close to 99% coverage of their SFPs, that's school feeding programs. We all started this thing in 2006 together. We have a challenge, and our challenge is that we have not sufficiently funded it. So if we decentralize this program, we will end up targeting it at the districts where poverty levels are highest and communities where school feeding is needed to enhance enrollment and also boost nutrition. Okay. So we'll continue to advocate for a decentralization of the program, increase financing. I'm told they are still doing, I think it's about 2 cities the amount being paid for school feeding is not enough to buy an egg. And so we need to increase allocation to the school feeding program, decentralize it, depoliticize the procurement, so that it's managed as a homegrown program with effectiveness and not a political gift for people who campaign for a particular political party. Those are some of the things that it is one of the top 10 priorities on our advocacy notes with the new government.
Okay. All right. Dr. Peter Anti joins us. He's the Executive Director of the Institute of Education Studies. Dr. Anti, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning, sir.
So, Doc, I noticed a couple of things about this this piece that our colleague has done. The first is that, obviously, these children are being taught the wrong things. But they are being taught by an SHS graduate who doesn't know the alphabet. An SHS graduate who doesn't know the alphabet. Now, if we are having students go through basic school and secondary school, all the way up to the point where they can be admitted into a university, any university in this world, and they don't know the alphabet, is this enough grounds to say that our education system is not fit for purpose?
Well, for me, this is enough ground to say that we have not been fair to the disadvantaged in society. We have not been fair to some aspect of or category of people in our society, because you will not experience this in urban Ghana. It will be difficult for you to experience this in certain parts of the country where we call an urban Ghana. So it's just an indication that our education policies have not been targeted well in terms of teacher deployment, in terms of supervision and monitoring, in terms of provision of educational resources. That is what this tells me, because and I always say this. I've worked on the EMIS data. Sometimes when you refer to this, people don't understand. Every year we collect data on all basic schools in this country. So this school that you are talking about would be in the database, and it is just a matter of a click for somebody in power, somebody in authority, to identify that this is what is happening in the school. Because when you collect the data, it tells you the number of teachers in the school, it tells you the qualification of the teachers in the school, it tells you the nature of the school building, it tells you the number of students in the school. So if we really want to solve our educational problem, we just have to rely on the data and then start addressing the problem based on what the data is saying. So you wouldn't need to go to Accra and put up another structure there. But then the data will tell you that these are places where school buildings are not fit for purpose. A study done by NASIA, which is the School Inspectorate Authority, indicated that they visited 1,000 schools in the country, and 75% of them, which means that 750 of those schools were not fit for purpose. These are things that we know, and these are things that our leaders and the authorities are so much aware. So it sometimes beats my imagination when we feign innocence. We try to portray that we are not aware of these things until the media brings them up, and then we jump on it and we want to save our face. So it's an indication of how bad our policies have been planned and targeted and implemented in the country.
So today, if you are a parent in Sagbonjida and you are worried about your child's future, what are your options?
It's difficult because the community the community indicates that you are not in a well-to-do community. It means that you don't have options of moving your child from this school to another school. It means that this is your only source of education for your ward. You don't have any option. All that you have to do is to maybe press on your local authorities and your district assembly to help you fix this. But we all know that by the time you get to the support, your child would have really moved up to certain levels and have carried on with all those misinformation that has been fed him throughout his education. So I think that this is a good thing that you are doing. I believe that this will bring attention to the school, and the political authority would act immediately. But as a parent, my options are very limited, and maybe I will have to resort to prayers to believe or hope that something will be done about the current situation of my world education.
Now, Doc, you gave an interesting statistic from a study that they visited 1,000 schools and 750 were not fit for purpose.
Yes, last year.
Yeah, and this was just 2024, right?
So this is, I think this is 2022, 2023.
Okay,
yeah.
All right, 2022, 23. So I guess it brings me back. I mean, so then why are we falling short of saying that the education system is not fit for purpose? If 75% of our schools are not fit for purpose, then surely there's no clearer metric than that. Why are we falling short of declaring that our education system is not fit for purpose?
Yes, you know, this is out of 1,000 schools. If you take the number of primary schools that we have in Ghana, we are doing something around 43,000. And then if you take the secondary schools, we are doing something around 800. So you might want to. These are randomly sampled. So it means that if you project to the population, you
precisely
might have a similar number happening.
Precisely my point. So if you have about 43,000, you pick 1,000, and 75% of them are not fit for purpose. I mean, that's quite an indicator, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and I agree with you. But you know, you do not want to make you do not want to sound like somebody who is pronouncing doom in a education system.
Well, except that Dr. Pate, except that you know, the number is statistically very significant, and so you're not predicting doom. But let me bring in Kofi in, because Kofi, we're having the National Education Forum, and that all-important review we talk about our educational sector. This is the opportunity. What is going to happen tomorrow in particular as part of the National Education Forum? How are these concerns going to feature in addressing the challenges facing our educational sector? Kofi, if you could kindly reposition yourself, we can hardly hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Still not. If you could position yourself. Okay.
Hello.
Yes, I think it's better now. Go ahead.
Yeah. So today and tomorrow, the National Education Forum will be having conversations, as I earlier mentioned, with stakeholders from the community all the way to the national level: parents, teachers, market women, drivers, security men, everyone is represented. And the conversation is about it's about building consensus on the way forward. Okay. And top of the agenda is the issue of the rural-urban divide, which is especially forward in our conversation this morning. And so we have identified 5 pillars of education transformation, and within these pillars, we recommend that policy converges around. The pillars are infrastructure, education financing, education quality and positioning, regulation, accountability and governance, and the last one is research and evidence. So within these pillars, discussions will happen across the various sub-levels. So, for example, if you take infrastructure, there will be a conversation on all 4 sub-levels: basic, secondary, TVET, tertiary, and then inclusion will be a cost-cutting feature. Same for quality, teacher deployment, everything will be discussed along the lines of basic, secondary, and inclusion. So the conversation we are having this morning squarely falls within inclusion. And so there's a big question we need to discuss, which is how do we bridge the relevant divide, inequality, and teacher deployment in rural areas, teacher retention, teacher motivation in deprived areas is big on the agenda. And the congregation is not a congregation of the usual people who always meet and talk about education. This is a congregation of people who normally are not invited to the table. As I mentioned, these are market women, these are electricians, electronic repairs, masons, larger trade associations, drivers, the beneficiaries of education, students, parents, PTAs, their teachers, across all the way to the ministry level. So it will be an opportunity to listen to suggestions, not less about problems, because we all appreciate the challenges we are confronted with, but more about innovative solutions and then building consensus on same. That is essentially what we'll be doing here today and tomorrow, and then also across the country from tomorrow till the 28th of February.
Dr. Anti, if you were at this forum and you were given the microphone, what advice will you give on how to prevent and avoid another Sagbonjida ever happening?
Dr. Anti, representing an education financial fund.
Kofi knows that I'm here, and I have a presentation to make. I would just say that we should make sure that people buy into the educational policies and plans that we have. I would say that we should ensure that the policies are a reflection of what people believe in, the generality of the Ghanaian people. I would say that we should ensure that our policies are equitable in terms of its implementation and its funding, because the biggest challenge that we have had is the wholesale of implementing our policies in this country. And that has led to a lot of inequalities in our educational system, and even moving up into the employment, the employment level. So we should have a clear focus in helping bring up those who are marginalized, those who are down there, those who are disadvantaged. We should have a clear focus in developing educational policies that will bring them up to the level that they would be also they can also sustain themselves. I think that is one sure way that we can use to poverty in this country. So we should use educational policy to bridge the gap of inequality, to elevate poverty, and to ensure that people are productive after they have gone through our educational system. We shouldn't have a situation whereby at the end of education, the individual will still be moving about, struggling to find something to do. These are the focus that I think we should have, and with the opportunity given, we will be making this point forward.
Dr. Anti, Mr. Asari, thank you both for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Right.